I think we're all, well, I guess Megan and Ebony, probably not yet.
I think it's open now for 18 and up, so.
$12 and up.
12 and up, actually. Yes, because children can get vaccinated with their parents. Al, are you frozen? Maybe just turn your head.
He always looks like that.
He's the only one that's not moving.
You're harsh, Dana. Harsh.
No. He's our comic. It's good. It's good, dry sense of humor.
Okay, so I think Councillor Beddoes is just logged out and he's going to log back in. So we'll just wait then. Here he is now. Yeah, he's back now.
He's looking animated now.
He's frozen again. I just moved my head from, so that's why I can tell, right?
Oh, there he goes. Oh, he froze again.
Al, can you test your audio? Councillor Beddoes, can you test your audio?
Can you hear us, Al?
I can.
Oh, you can. Okay. Okay, well, we're at 7 o'clock, so we'll see how this goes. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting of Tuesday, May 25th at 7 p.m. And thank you very much for joining with us tonight. Councillor Logans is unable to join us, and we share our condolences and wish to express those as she is with her family at a time of loss. And Councillor McMath is working this evening, so that leaves us with 5 members of council. So I shall now call this meeting to order, and I do wish to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting virtually on the traditional territory of the Sauk Nation. And so item number 5 is Ministerial Order M192, and that is that council is holding this meeting without members of the public in attendance under Ministerial Order M192, as council chambers cannot safely accommodate the unknown number of public participants wishing to attend, and that council is committed to ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability through the submission of written comments and the provision of live and recorded broadcasts of the meeting. So that is an item that we require resolution for. So I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor St. Pierre is moving, and seconded by Councillor Bateman. And so just since we've moved that, council and to members of the public and staff, we did receive some positive news from the province today. And as we get more information, then our staff will be looking closely on how we can begin to reopen chambers. I think a big challenge for us that remains is that if the 50 maximum of indoor gatherings remaining at 50, that's where we run into a challenge where we don't know how many members of the public will want to show up. And in a public hearing or any situation where we require public input, that would be something that we need to closely look at. So more information on this will come out in the next while. So for now, let's just make the best of meeting technology as we have it, and we'll have it all figured out just in time to come back in person. So I'll call the question on this motion, please. All those in favor? And that's not any opposed. So that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 6 is approval of tonight's agenda, and you'll also note, council, there is some new business and supplementary information. So I'll look for council to adopt the agenda with the inclusion of the supplementary and new business information. So I'll look for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Bateman. And I'll just add that those items will turn into or be numbered as 14.1 and 14.2. So all those in favor of approval, please. And any opposed? None opposed. That's carried unanimously. Meeting minutes here for adoption for May the 10th, our regular council meeting. So look for a member of council to move adoption of the minutes. So moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Any comments or corrections? Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just one item, and this was during the discussion of the business license bylaw number 778, item 14.1 on page 12 of the agenda, the total agenda tonight. And that was that I made a motion in an attempt to get option number 2 in the staff report put through. There was no seconder, and that has not shown up in the minutes.
That's correct, Councillor Bateman. When a motion isn't seconded, it does not exist. That's why it isn't shown in the minutes.
All right. Full-scale failure. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or corrections? See none, all those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, so delegations, so that goes to 8.1, and that is our quarterly report from our fire department. So I'd like to welcome Chief Mount, Director of Community Safety, please.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. In tonight's quarterly report, I'm going to kick things off with a little bit of a special video. I do have Captain Norris Jones online this evening as well. Himself and his team put together a 5-minute video that includes our 2020 recruit class. So these are 7 members that have gone through a series of training through the recruit program, through probationary process. And in the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, our normal traditional process of recognizing their efforts and getting through the actual recruit process cannot be done in the traditional means. So some time has been taken over the past several months through Captain Norris Jones to compile a video, and I'm going to share this video now, and you'll see that in this video there's a couple components to this actual pinning ceremony is what we ended up calling it. There's a part here where the pledge is done by the firefighters to show their dedication to the service and their commitment. And then the second part is a symbolic moment when the actual shield and badge is pinned on their uniform with family and friends in attendance. So it's 5 minutes long here, and I've gone through a little bit of testing in advance here. So bear with me as I share the screen and get the audio to come forward. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep, we can see it and hear it. Thank you, Chief.
I, Holly Cruz.
I, Michelle Schultz.
I, Malcolm Constantine.
I, Scott McMahon.
I, Carson Holmquist.
I, Erin Tepelko.
I, Kurt Horn, do hereby declare that as a member of District of Sioux Fire Rescue
The video
Department,
disappeared.
my duty is to serve the people. I swear to protect, to safeguard, preserve life, health, and property against fire and other perils, and to maintain a proficiency in the fire service.
I will uphold the highest standards in my profession and will share my knowledge, skills, and innovations with my colleagues.
I will at all times respect the property and the rights of all people, the laws of my country, and the members I serve with, and I will never allow my personal feelings nor danger to self to deter me from my responsibilities as a firefighter.
I will perform all aspects of my job professionally and exercise professionalism, competency, and loyalty in the performance of all my duties.
I will constantly strive to achieve the objectives and ideals that the fire service instills, dedicating myself to the saving of lives, protecting both property and the environment, and performing other duties entrusted upon me.
I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith and trust, and I accept to maintain the highest standards of personal integrity, honesty, and compassion to benefit those I serve.
As a member of the Superfire Rescue Department, I accept this as my responsibility and make these promises so solemnly, freely, and upon my life.
That concludes the video. Just an interesting fact, as you see those numbers before their names, those are their regimental numbers, and those stay with them throughout their career with the Sauk Fire Department. And those numbers have began really from the beginning when we started keeping track. So we have the 265th firefighter registered in our system now, which is an interesting fact. I get a moment while I have Captain Norris Jones on here. He spends most of the time with the members and the recruits going through the program as the lead training officer and the lead instructor. You have any words you want to add about your experience with these 7 members that are joining our team, and notably the 3 female members, as we're becoming more inclusive and growing our base of female membership?
Thank you, Chief. I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the uniqueness of the 2020 class. Typically, we run from January until June for the recruit program. Last year, as everyone is still well aware, that was thrown into a bit of chaos in March. And this past year's class persevered. They remained motivated and engaged throughout our downtime, where they were on the sidelines for about 5.5 weeks before we were able to get training started again. So this class, we've not lost a single member from when they were accepted into the program in November of 2019. We've got all of our members still intact, and they're still as eager and engaged as they were when they first started. So it's a testament to those 7, and the fact that that when things got tough for them in March of last year, they really banded together and came together. And I would argue that the challenges that they faced has brought them closer together and made a much tighter group going forward. And we're fortunate to have that group with us now.
Thank you, Captain. If there's not any further questions, I'm going to go into the quarterly report and just share my screen again and bring up the actual fact sheet.
Okay, before you do that, Chief, Council hasn't had a chance to ask any questions yet. So did you want us to do that now on the recruit, or would you rather? I see there's some hands up, so and Council has some questions. So maybe we'll just pause here before you head over, and then I just want to start actually by thanking both Chief Mount as well as Captain Norris Jones for your work and for working so closely with the recruits class. That's a significant accomplishment through a time of COVID. And I mean, you're in a life-saving situation, so you really need to find creative ways to train to keep the recruits safely, but also that as you head out on a call, that you need to know that that person is right there. So really want to applaud all of your work that you've done to maintain our recruits. We're almost at parity in the recruiting class, so also well done there. I'm hoping that these women will encourage and continue to inspire other women to consider joining our volunteers because we need them. We're a growing community, and when we only draw from half the population, we're missing out on the others. So well done there as well. And just thank you for all that you're doing. Concerned as we head into a busy summer, that potentially a dry summer, and that'll put all of your skills and training really to the test, and you've been busy. So thank you for all that you're doing. It's really appreciated. And for council, normally we would have our new recruits in uniform at the start of the meeting so we could all meet with them and give a round of applause, which unfortunately we're struggling to do. So I really appreciate the video. Thank you for putting that together and sharing it with us. So over to Councillor Lajeunesse, please.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate all the new recruits and good work, and also like to congratulate the pinners for not sticking anyone during the pinning ceremony.
That's good. That would have been a medical call, and you're prepared for that, so we're good. Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'll hand it back over to Chief Mount, please. Thank you for being with us tonight, Captain.
Thank you for the kind words. There was some suspense there in the pinning moments. So you should be seeing the actual, fact sheet come up.
Yes, we can see it here. Thank you.
Right. So just going through some of the high level items in here to provide an indication of an overview of what some of the things that stand out as far as the first quarter of 2021. I tend to look at some of these numbers here, and one of the first things that stands out is the amount of rescues we've had in 2021 in the first quarter early on in the year, and that's 15. And what that's really showing is that we're seeing, because of the pandemic, more residents and visitors that are spending more time in our parks and in our forest, and this has really resulted in an increased number of trail rescues that are requiring distant type of patient removal. And most notably, we had to do one about a month ago from the top of Mount Quimper, which was about a 4-hour effort there. So that's a definite trend that we're watching right now. Compared to 2020, our medical call volume is coming back to historical norms that we really saw in 2019. Other statistic here is there's 19 new businesses as part of the business license process. And when I get into our training, we're still in an alternate training mode, but as of today, in the news that we got from the province, we'll likely be in some planning here over the summer to look back, adjusting back into some sort of normalized training. But it's quite popular, the alternate training model that we have. And the way it's being delivered, it's the smaller groups are becoming to be very popular and effective, and there's a good sign-up ratio with that program in place. Other training that we've been doing has also been related to preparation for wildfire season. We've been doing some initial attack incident command type training, and we also have some Office of the Fire Commissioner type of training happening over the next weekend and into June also. We've been utilizing the Machosen training facility, which is the old school across the road from the fire station there. That's having a good second purpose as a training facility for emergency management and the fire service. On the capital equipment side of things, most notable thing there is old car 1211 is being asset transferred into the district, and the new hybrid unit is now in operation. It's not completely in service. We just put the radio in. Have a few more things to configure on it, but it is a much better vehicle, and quite impressed so far with the hybrid motor option in there. In the highlights and initiatives section, right above it is actually some good graphics that are showing some of the unique training that we got to do in April. Captain Norris Jones and the team spent quite a bit of time looking after preparing this home that you see in the middle picture to do several evolutions of search type training. And on April 10th, we ended up doing some live scenario type training where we actually lit some fires, went in, attacked the fires, extinguished them, and went through all our operations and motions from incident command.
Chief, I'm not seeing that on my screen. Does everybody else see that, what he's talking about?
Here it is here.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Thanks for the reminder. I just had to scroll it down a little further.
All right.
So in that picture there in the middle, that was a choir structure just up on Otter Point Road, and that's quite a rare opportunity when we have, you know, the ability to go in and use an actual structure. There's quite a bit of work and safety measures that go into place as far as making it safe and removing any type of, you know, items that are dangerous when we're doing any type of burning situations. So great opportunity. It was a good morale booster for the members, and something that doesn't come around very often. Of note in the recent initiatives is the UBCM grant for $75,000 for Fire Smart Coordinator position. I did have a call back from them a couple weeks ago, and they're still reviewing applications right now. They just had to clarify a few things. I hope to hear something soon on the success of that grant. We do have firefighter John Hester in the position. That competition that was internal for the 9-month term is in action right now, and that's working out quite well. And it's great to have, you know, a rapid injection of support into our membership right away with the day staff. The fire department master plan program is in place. Dave Mitchell and Associates was awarded the contract, and we are meeting with them initially for a first meet and greet tomorrow. And then the first stakeholder meeting is happening in June. Subsequent planning of other stakeholder meetings, including council, will be planned out of that June meeting. So stand by for more information on that. In the fun facts and trends section, our president of the Sioux Firefighter Association, Paul Sutherland, just last week retired after 34 years of service in the Navy. He was a submariner commander, and he's a great addition to our team and a great leader for the association. So quite an impressive feat for Paul to spend 34 years in the service. And we'll likely see him more available during the day to support us on some day-to-day operations. We've been heavily involved with a lot of the spring conference sessions that are predominantly virtual right now. We've been involved with the Training Officers Conference that was done online, the Fire Prevention Officers Conference, as well as the Vancouver Island Emergency Preparedness Conference. And then coming up in June is the Fire Chiefs Association of British Columbia's conference, where I'm on the board of directors there as the Zone 1 Deputy Director. So I'll be doing a little bit of planning and support with that conference as well. The last section on the top here is just with respect to the emergency program, just sharing you some stats there as well. Most notable is that we've had 3 level 1 ESS callouts in the first quarter. And this was due to some structure fires and some flooding incidents. And our emergency support services director came out to support that incident there. And also here in the emergency preparedness week, we were doing quite a bit of advertising with the Alertable app. On our district website, there's an actual link there where you can sign up and make use of that app. I'm finding it quite useful already, and if you have signed up for it, you may be seeing notifications come through the Ministry of Highway Transportation Infrastructure with respect to any type of highway closures or road closures, and even fires that are nearby. So it is showing to be more easy to use and of much more use to our residents. And that really is the gist of what I have here for the first quarter update, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. And thank you for your time and patience for going through that painting ceremony video.
Thank you very much for joining with us tonight. If you don't mind just stopping the share screen, and then I can see all of council again. And so as I wait for that, and I'll see if council has questions, I just want to thank you again for your work that you're doing, Chief, and for keeping things rolling along in this unique and whatever time, as we all have our own adjectives for this pandemic. Councillor St. Pierre, please.
Just a quick question for the chief. I was curious about the progress with the apparatus and whether or not COVID, with the various disruptions in the supply chain, had held it up, or what's happening with that.
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, are you referring to specifically to Unit 217, the new Car 1?
If we're talking about the new large engine, then yes.
Oh, so the new large engine is actually in service, and when I was referring to 217 is actually the replacement of old Car 1 there. So any delays in getting a new unit into service really has to do with just timing of getting the configuration of it done with the internal gear for storage.
Though in terms of any of your equipment that you need any parts for this and that, are you encountering any supply chain challenges, or is everything you're needing relatively easy and to source and have delivered?
We've been experiencing more issues with some supply chain, deliveries, more so in 2020 than in 2021. Really, the delay of 217 coming into service, was a result of the pandemic, and that's why we really had it come into 2021 as, the final, time where it's going to get into service. So not currently right now, and we don't have any larger capital items right now that are going to be impacted from supply chain, but I have heard of other departments that are having some issues, and I have heard about the auto industry having some issues with computer chips and production of fleet vehicles being put on hold until the actual chips are available.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Councillor Bateman, please.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Thank you, Chief, for the report, and really heartwarming to see those local heroes joining the ranks. Speaking of the ranks, back in 2018, you noted that an optimal sized force is about 55 firefighters. Are you getting closer to that number?
Through the chair to Councillor Bateman, actually the opposite trend is occurring, and part of the reason for that right now with the pandemic is the holding of any recruitment. We are planning to have recruitment start again in January of 2022. So you'll see our efforts over the summer to ramp up that campaign, and the advertising will start. The social media information will be out there. And we are seeing an actual loss of some of our base veteran members as people are retiring, moving out of the community, moving into the interior, having to be in the city, commuting challenges, also going back to university. There's been a number of things with our base kind of veteran members of greater than 5 years experience, and that's taking a toll on us. So we're actually a decline. When I look at the roster, there's a decline in membership, and I do have concerns also with being able to recruit effectively in the Station 2 area in Casinos. One thing I expect with the Fire Department Master Plan this year is to identify that and some recommendations coming out of that consultant report.
I guess you're well positioned for recruitment with the completion of the paid on-call 3-year implementation. So is that now complete?
The final implementation in the final year really was delayed for obvious reasons. So we've pushed that out to 2022. We really couldn't have full value with the unknowns of a pandemic of trying to have members do full weekend training when it wasn't even offered. we're just starting to see those offerings come now, and likely in the fall we'll have, a request to be doing some training on the weekends and more training like we're seeing now in the Machosen training facility with some other options. The paid on call system I see actually providing benefits on recruitment. So there is an interest there. It's sort of legitimizing the role differently, and younger members are more curious and coming in to ask questions about recruitment. It's the retention side of things there that we have to look at seriously and make sure, what we can do differently here, and if there's any alternate strategies to retain members in our community.
Okay. I guess the next major equipment purchase will be engine 204, right? Is that next on the hit list?
Engine 204, which is really our old engine 1, is now at station 2. So in the 5-year capital replacement plan, you'll note there that I'm currently looking at deferring some engine procurement and pushing things out as long as possible based upon, the longevity of it, and doing some further condition indexing work on the actual assets. I do have a schedule in June where myself and Captain McRae and our mechanic are going to go through a reevaluation of the condition index scoring that we did several years ago. But I am strategizing and going to have an expectation that our fire department master plan will be reviewing our long-term apparatus replacement plan as well. So there's nothing in the books for this year, and we'll be taking a serious look at it and being frugal with our 5-year budget.
And my final question relates to inspections. I know this was a hot topic a couple of years ago, and you were in a situation where one officer was doing it part-time. How is that going? Are you comfortable? I know you have to do 6-month annual and every 2-year inspections of over, 212 businesses, I think, as of a few years ago anyway.
Through the chair to Councillor Bateman, I would say the inspection process will need to ramp up again. The COVID pandemic really, at the initial beginning, put, kind of a hold and freeze on it till we, really got direction from the Office of the Fire Commissioner and the Fire Chiefs Association of BC is that, inspections and safety is really paramount, and we need to find a way to do it safely. So we began in 2020 after a pause for several months to, begin that process again. And with the addition of the temporary firefighter, right now we're planning to put in a company inspection program starting in July and August. And that schedule will be developed in June. And that's a means of ramping up and being able to tackle more inspections and making sure we're getting the right amount done in the right amount of time.
All right. Thank you for your prudent management of one of our key resources. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Any other questions for our fire chief? Okay, so thank you very much for joining with us and for providing this update from your department, Chief Mount. And please pass on our regards to the full department for all the work that they're doing. And we look forward to obviously including your quarterly and other reports into our annual report, which we will be finalizing fairly soon, I would think. Oh, I see a question. Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm just wondering if we need a motion to accept the report.
Yeah, let's do that. Motion to receive Chief Mount's report for information by Councillor St. Pierre. That's seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Anything to comment on, Councillor St. Pierre?
No, well done. Like the video, and enjoyed the actual way that the report was put together and the density of the information.
Yes, thank you very much, Chief. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and have a good night, Chief. Of course, you're welcome to stay with us as always, as well as Captain Norris Jones. I'm sure he would love to do that on this night, so we welcome you to stay as long as your time permits.
I'll be here for you. Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. So our next item is item 9, which is a report of our Chief Administrative Officer. So Mr. McInnes.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I do want to pass along my appreciation to Chief Mount and all of his members on how they serve our community. It's really inspiring, and the video was great. Thank you. Just a couple of things to report on tonight. The BC Restart 2.0. We did try a restart not so long ago, if you recall. So, thank you, Your Worship. You covered it in your opening remarks quite well. I'm just a couple of highlights that I thought were important. So through step 1 and step 2 of this 4-step process, those two steps, which will take us until about the beginning of July, wearing masks and physical distancing are still a requirement under those 2 steps. So that doesn't change, and really not a whole lot changes in step 1, although we can make reservations and go out for a meal again, which is a pretty big step. In step 3, when step 3 comes, the provincial state of emergency and the public health emergency will be lifted. So again, just another sign that we are moving in the right direction. And then finally, through step 3 and step 4, we will have to work with WorkSafe BC, and each sector has to update their sector guidelines to meet the safety and public health guidance rules that will be in place. So some of that stuff we don't know at this point, and it'll be being pushed out over the next few weeks on what the WorkSafe updates are going to look like. So that's it on the restart. One of the other things that I want to bring council up to speed on tonight is just our planning and budget cycle dates for the 2022 cycle. So we do plan on getting in front of council at the July 26th meeting for our first discussion around service levels, and asking council what questions they would like to see as part of the public service level debate or discussion this year. So July 26th, and then we do plan on having the public engagement piece open from about August 1st till September 7th on Let's Talk Souk, or our Bang the Table platform. Special meeting on September 13th, where we'll come back with the service level report and some of the departmental requests. Regular meeting on October 12th. We hope to have the first draft of the 5-year financial plan in front of council. A fulsome review of that at the October 18th Committee of the Whole. Second draft in front of council on October 25th. And then our 2-day open house on budget on November 2nd and 3rd. And then the formal public input and third reading on November 22nd. And if all goes well, adoption of the 5-year financial plan at the December 13th council meeting. So thanks to the team. Everyone's been working hard and getting that schedule together and getting ready with this next round of planning, as we now have the tax rate bylaw and the assessment notices and tax notices going out. So it just keeps rolling. So thanks everyone for their work on that. And then the last thing, I've been talking with Mayor Tait, and we're gearing up for the annual CAO evaluation. So hopefully I will have that package to the mayor by the end of the week this week, and Mayor Tait can distribute that to council members, and we can set a date for that completion as well before my anniversary date on July 2nd, where I'll be here with you fine folks for 2 years now already, which blows me away. And that's all I have, Your Worship, this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. McInnes. I heard you say that the province is going to lift the emergency orders. Was it in July, or I think you gave somewhere between phase 2 and phase 3 of the reopening, or did you actually provide a date?
No, it's when phase 3 is announced. So they do have tentative dates, but the dates are not the important thing. It's really the data is the important thing to move from one stage to one step to the next step. So when step 3 is announced, that's when the state of emergency is planned to be lifted.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. And I just, I know that the province is putting forward legislation to change how councils can conduct meetings. So we could look at hybrid options going into the future. So that may require an amendment to our procedural bylaw, just so members of council are aware of that. And I also just thank you for the dates and related to the service and the budget. I think that, and I can't speak for all of council, just sort of what I'm sensing is there may be a desire for a open town hall type of meeting when we, obviously when we hit phase 4, because I wouldn't want to limit attendance there. But I'm sensing there'll be a need just to have some good chatter about what we've been doing, and folks might want to see one another. So we used to do what was called the Talktober event a few years ago. So if there's some way that you could factor something like that in, obviously contingent on the reopening plans, I think that would be a good opportunity for us to reconnect with residents in a more physical, or like an in-person form, not a virtual form.
For sure, and I just thought it was important to give you some dates. Right now, we've still got a lot of internal planning to do, but absolutely, I hope that formal meetings like that and informal bringing community together is something that we'll be considering here. I'm not sure if anything on Canada Day is too ambitious this year, but perhaps something smallish.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor St. Pierre? Question, go ahead.
I'll beg the indulgence of staff on this one because I'm sure they're going to cringe. But during the summer, if the restrictions are lifted quickly enough, we could potentially have an open air meeting of some sort in the park next door, which would allow a lot of people to gather together and basically take care of the 50-person restriction to some degree. It might be a really nice way to do things, especially if there were some festivities included to basically celebrate the return to a new normal. But yeah, just thought I'd put that out there.
Well, I think we can maybe do a bit more than invite everyone to a council meeting. Maybe just some local entertainment might be a better draw, but yeah, something to keep in mind for sure.
We are the local entertainment.
I know, apparently. So not yeah, I don't know that we draw a big crowd, but you never know. I guess it'll depend on the agenda item. So something to think about. Okay, thank you very much for that update, Mr. McInnes. So I'm going to move into item 10, which is our public question and comment period. So I'm going to ask our corporate officer to call out or introduce members of the public that are here to address council on tonight's agenda. And each member of the public will have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only speaker registered this evening is Marilyn Erickson.
Okay, good evening, Ms. Erickson. If you could please turn on your camera and your microphone, we would be delighted to hear from you.
I'm trying to turn the camera on.
I can hear you.
I know. Turn camera on. So odd. It was working earlier.
It was. Do you see the little video? The little video
icon? It looks like I'm on now.
There you are. Welcome.
Thank you. That was on. Probably that cell tower up here is just interfering with my signal, making it stronger. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I don't know if you've got a letter that was sent today about our community grant we received, but we have a new term of reference with the Suit Community Association, who have now decided that the money that we had raised together should go for the back court, not the front court. And their thinking is they wish to save a tennis court. And so they want to do the tennis court with one pickleball court on, which leaves us with no pickleball courts, which was what we're working for so hard the last 4 years. So I would like permission to keep that $6,000 as we raise money, and we have their permission to do the front court. And now I just have to find sponsors and grant money to do that, unless you have COVID contingency funds or something where we could move forward for this really important community asset that needs saving, because we just can't play safely on that front court anymore. And it needs resurfacing, and the need is there. Once we get the order to play again, which should be tomorrow, we're going to have, we've got 175 members waiting to play. So we need 3 more courts, and I would like to do it as soon as possible. I'd like your input really to see who we should approach, what we could do, how we can get 3 community courts like most other communities on the island. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Erickson. We do have another item of correspondence from another player that we will be discussing later. It's item 15.1.
Okay.
And so appreciate the information that you're sharing with us. And then at that time, council will discuss it further and perhaps ask for more information, in which case we'll follow back up to you or with you on this item.
I'll come back to hear that then.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Erickson.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Are there questions, or is that later?
That would all be later. This is just an opportunity to hear from you. So thank you very much for making yourself available tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Machado. I understand that Ms. Erickson was our only registered member of the public, so we will move on then. Okay, so council, next up is item 11. That's our consent agenda. The recommendation is that agenda items number 11.1 and 11.2 be approved by general consent. So is there a mover for that? Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Was any member of council wanting to extract anything for individual debate? Now would be the time to do that. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'd like to just quickly comment on the joint meeting.
Go ahead, please. Yep, that would be a time as well.
Yeah, so as I think we mentioned at the last meeting, this is a pretty remarkable moment where 2 district committees came together. The minutes truly a great reflection of the possibilities and potential moving forward, the recognition that to really deal with the 3 prongs of community economic development, it's a huge task. And that once the Climate Action Committee's term winds down at the end of the year, that there is a possibility of increased membership in the CEDC committee for perhaps 1 or 2 individuals focused strongly on the climate component of the social, economic, environmental matrix. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Councillor Bateman. Any other comments from members of council or desire to extract? Okay, so then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, which is to receive and file, thank you, and none opposed, so that's unanimous. Okay, so heading into item 12, reports. 12.1 is policy framework amendment here. So I'll turn this over to staff.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one item is fairly straightforward. Council has the policy framework that they adopted a couple of years ago, and that sets out how our policies look, the process that they go through for approval, etc. And our leadership team would just like to make a recommendation that we change up the approval process for policy amendments, and that those approvals just go through the appropriate department for approvals, that they don't go through our complete leadership team, just to make better use of our time and resources.
Okay, thank you. Questions from members of council? Are there any questions? Okay, so the recommendation is that council amend policy framework CO-001 to update the policy review procedure chart. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? And none opposed. Thank you. Okay, well, that was easy. So we'll move on to the next one then, which is 12.2, development cost charge. program public engagement. So back over to staff, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. So the report in front of council tonight is to get council's direction for district staff to proceed with public engagement with the development community regarding the draft development cost charge program. So at the February 16th committee, the whole meeting, Urban Systems gave a presentation and an overview of the proposed program for the district. It was at that time that council's input was received, and accordingly went back with Urban Systems, and they made several updates, minor updates to the program to reflect some of council's input, as well as to make some adjustments to reflect current market rates that we're experiencing right now with some of the projects within the program. The report has outlined in it proposed engagement process, as well as the next steps for going forward for adopting the DCC bylaw program. And I'll just take a second and introduce Mr. Heffernan from Urban Systems is with us tonight, and he's just going to give a brief presentation just summarizing some of the program updates, as well as the adjusted rates for the program.
Thank you, Mr. Carter, and welcome, Mr. Heffernan.
Thank you for having me. So thank you to Your Worship and Council for having me back tonight. As Jeff as mentioned, I'm going to provide a brief presentation, just kind of outlining at a high level just what we've done to update the DCCs. It'll be kind of a quick recap at the beginning, and then from there we'll move into just a description of, again, the process, the changes to the overall rates that have incurred, and kind of what some of those changes were. We're then going to present the new draft rates, and then an overview of the proposed community engagement process for council's approval before moving forward with that. So I'll just share my screen now, and let me know if you have any issues seeing what I'm presenting. Can everyone see that?
Yep, it looks good. If you can make it a little bit larger, that would be awesome. But if not, that's okay. I think, yeah, we have some screen limitations, but that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, let me know if there's anything I can try and zoom in if there's any points that are not coming out as clearly on there. But yeah, I'll walk you through this, and let me know if you have any questions as we're going through. So just a quick recap from our presentation last time. Currently DCCs are charged in suit for transportation and sewer services. The district is able to charge DCCs as well for drainage and parks. So, and water in this case is charged again by the CRD. The transportation DCCs were last updated in 2012, which is 9+ years ago. And at that time too, the wastewater DCCs were carried forward from the 2004 DCCs program into the 2012 program. So those rates and those projects are currently 16 years old. And there are no stormwater and park acquisition or park development project DCCs in suit currently. I've mentioned in the previous presentation that this is an ideal time to do DCC update with the recent completion of the Parks and Trails and Transportation Master Plans in 2020. As we presented last time, the current rates in Souk, again, with CRD water, are currently around $10,800 for a single detached residential unit, and $5,700 for a multifamily apartment. Commercial rate is currently sitting around $80.23, again with the CRD rates factored in, and there are no charges currently for industrial or institutional uses. So those are two additional changes that were also made. So in this program, we've added stormwater and park acquisition and improvement, as well as industrial and institutional charges. And these are very characteristic and common across the region in terms of the typical charges that are applied through the development cost charge bylaws in the CRD. Just a quick overview again of kind of the process to date. So, we've gone through, and in the blue here, we can see kind of the technical inputs in the background. The orange here highlights the assist factor, which is again a policy decision by council, and that kind of equals our DCC recoverable rates. So we determine the growth projections and the total overall project cost for the DCCs. Each project is given a benefit allocation, so a relative benefit to new versus existing growth. And then from that, there's an additional municipal assist factor. So again, the assist factor is a policy decision by council, and it's required in legislation that an assist is given to development, and that can be anywhere between 1% and 99%. And we've recommended in this case for the 1%, and council in the February 16th committee, the whole meeting, generally agreed that that was a good starting place for the assist factor. So these technical inputs and the assist factor have been brought together to kind of create the draft DCC rates as they are. So again, for the growth projections and timeline, we're determining project timing priorities over a 20-year time horizon from 2021 to 2040 based on where growth is occurring. The DC projects were based on where new development is occurring in the next 10 years, so i.e. where new services will be required, as well as those projects identified in the transportation and parks and trails master plans, as well as the 5-year capital plan and inputs from staff through a number of workshops over the past few months. Project benefit allocations, again, are determined kind of through the technical engineering exercise and the work done in the master planning, as well as the workshops with staff. And again, this is kind of a measurement of each project to determine the portion of capital costs attributed to kind of the new versus existing development. So in last presentation, I provided an example where greenfield developments are, generally considered like new service areas, and the costs for those types of development are generally weighted higher towards the DCC portion because the benefit is towards future growth. Whereas some of the projects that are a mix of renewal and adding a different additional capacity may be a shared cost. So some of those may be along the lines of 50-50. So I've given an example of upgrading existing water main or sewer main to a 300 from a 150 to a 300 millimeter pipe. So, relative benefit that occurs from that upgrade. In the previous meeting, we also discussed the municipal assist factor and got confirmation on the 1% moving forward on February 16. That again is a council decision and a policy that can be adjusted as council sees fit based on the rates presented. So again, just a quick highlight of where we are in the process. So we've done the background, determined the project costs, capital costs, the benefit allocations, estimated the growth, determined the equivalency factors and draft assist factor, and calculated the draft DCC rates. Those were presented to council in February, and we're back now just presenting some of the updates that we've done due to new project cost information, as well as the feedback received from council at the time. So again, we're here in the process looking overall at the stakeholder consultation and kind of as a next step before bringing the bylaw forward formally for 3 readings. So just an overview of what's changed since the last presentation. So there were several minor updates that occurred to address council's feedback and incorporate new information. So just walking through them one by one, there's updated project costs to reflect new information from recent tenders. So we had kind of more information on some of the costs and how some of the costs have changed recently due to changes in overall materials and labor and whatnot. This equaled an overall minor increase to all DCC rates in the program. Based on council's feedback, we also reviewed the low density DCC rates for single detached units to consider the impact of suites, as well as the servicing greenfield development in that process. And this kind of ties in with the piece below where, based on the new OCP and the, idea that there'll probably be a bigger push towards more infill development. This led to an increase in single family rates to reflect this higher impact on services. We also reviewed commercial, industrial, and institutional infrastructure impacts based on additional servicing information, and this resulted in overall lower DCCs for commercial and institutional uses. Part of that too is partially for the higher increase in single-family rates. We also reviewed again the multifamily infrastructure impacts based on the potential for more infill. Infill development typically has a lower impact in terms of infrastructure costs and therefore the lower DCC rates. So these were adjusted to reflect that. And again, we incorporated the confirmation of the 1% DCC municipal assist factor, resulting in no impact to DCC rates, because that was our initially proposed recommendation to council in February. So the changes to the overall DCC rate compared to the existing DCC rate today, not including the cost with the CRD water, which I'll show on the next slide, increase the single detached residential DCCs from 7,800 to 15,500, which is a 98% increase. For medium density, so the duplexes, townhouses, triplexes, we increased from 5,100 to 8,463, which is about a 64% increase. For the high density multifamily, we increased from 4,000 to 4,982, and which is about 22%. And for commercial, we go from around $69.50 to $73.19, which is a modest 5% increase. Sorry. So when we compare this overall with the total CRD DCC water rates, we see that the additional $2,900 in the CRD brings the grand total up to $18,500 for single detached, just over 11,000 for the medium density, $6,600 for multifamily, $84 for commercial, $54.79 for industrial, and $96.40 for institutional. So in the last presentation, I outlined briefly how these kind of fit in on the regional scale, and just we like to say DCCs aren't a pick number exercise, but we find that it's often there's some value in comparing to one's neighbors, just see where they fit in the region. But this is again reflective of infrastructure costs divided by the overall growth. So we can see here at 18,500 that Sooke is towards kind of the upper middle of the pack for the region, just under the city of Langford at just under 24,000. As noted below, Langford also does have an additional sewer charge that is not reflected in this, and that is related to the fact that they operate on a private sewer system. Nanaimo, just slightly under where Sooke is currently, and then we have kind of Courtenay, Saanich, View Royal, Colwood, and Central Saanich below Sooke. This is again just for single family. When we compare Sooke to neighboring communities in the region and other communities in the region, we see that for the apartment DCC rate, the multifamily high density DCC rate, that our current rate is towards the lower middle of DCC rates. So that puts Sooke at $71.32. It sits below Saanich, View Royal, Nanaimo, Courtenay, and Langford, and just above Central Saanich and Colwood. I think it's important to note too the dates at which the DCCs were updated. So, for example, the city of Colwood hasn't updated their DCCs since 2011. So, as time progresses, the older the bylaws are, typically the lower rates that they'll show. So again, for commercial, this was a topic of discussion in our last meeting. This has come down since our last discussion and currently sits again towards kind of the middle of the pack, below Nanaimo and Langford, sitting at $83.93, and just above Courtenay by about $1, and above Saanich, View Royal, Central Saanich, and Colwood. So just something to keep in mind in these comparisons as well is that not all communities are the same. Greenfield communities will typically have higher DCCs just because of the higher servicing costs, and again, this is reflected in the rates and the proportionally higher rates and increases in the single family dwelling category versus the multifamily category, or infill is anticipated. So just a few conclusions here before discussing the kind of this engaging stakeholders in the community. When one factors in development related charges, Sooke's proposed DCCs are generally in the middle of comparable residential rates in other island communities. DCC rates are increasing between 5% on the low end for commercial and a high end of 98% for single family. But it's important to note this includes 2 new eligible services. So parks and drainage are also being added, which is a significant change from the previous program. And then that the increases in DCC are lower comparable in a lot of cases to the changes in housing and land costs, as well as development costs since the previous update. In your program, transportation and wastewater currently represent the greatest proportion of the total DCC program value. So just a quick overview of where we're going in terms of community engagement. The best practices guide for DCCs created by the province recommends consulting with key stakeholders in the development industry as part of the DCC update. Being a charge focused on development, we typically like to focus our stakeholder engagement on the development community. However, in this case, we'll also have an opportunity for the general public to comment through the district's Bang the Table website. So we would propose, once council confirms the direction of proceed with consultation, we would reach out to the development community key stakeholders, including the Urban Development Institute, Canadian Home Builders Association for Vancouver Island, and the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board. Again, we would look to the Bang the Table website and post basically a page there with some pertinent information as well as a survey, and advertise for a development industry stakeholder meeting to be held in the middle of June via Zoom. We'd have this page active for about 3 weeks, you know, and with the possibility to potentially extend it to 4. Notice be provided through stakeholder organizations and others working in SUC. The developer industry stakeholder meeting will be held via Zoom. So next steps would be to conduct consultation with the key stakeholders as described. If council decides to move forward with that process tonight, once that's completed, we then look to vet the draft DCC program with ministry staff in advance of sending the formal request for review. So again, the DCCs are a process that need to be reviewed by the ministry, and there's kind of the formal review process, but we typically like to send them kind of a draft of where we're going in advance, just to point out any issues they may have prior to the formal submission. That would then be brought forward in the council presentation for approval of final DCC rates, and if council approves of those rates at the time, the bylaw will be given 3 readings and then submitted to the ministry for final and formal review and endorsement. Once that's returned, there would be a 4th reading of the bylaw for adoption. We've also noted, as in the previous presentation, and we covered a lot of ground in February 16th, so this is very much a summary, that we're also looking to do DCC reductions bylaw as a separate process, and that would happen after the adoption of the 4th reading of the proposed DCC bylaw, and that would allow council to evaluate any potential DCC reductions for affordable housing. So that's my quick summary there. Just wanted to see if there's any questions at this point. Yeah, happy to answer questions that Mayor and Council may have now.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. I think you might need to mute. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I get the echo through through the system here, so it's a bit distracting when that happens. Thank you for the updated presentation. I just have a question. I have 2 actually. Firstly, with the roads and the last update from 2012 and how those sort of carried forward, do you know if we increased the DCCs when that change was done in 2012, or was it still just at whatever the rates were prior to that?
Yeah, so if the question is was there an increase prior between the prior DCC bylaw and 2012? I'm not sure. It's something I could look into and answer. I would assume there was, and I think that was in our background research, that there was an increase in the transportation that reflected an update in the transportation master plan at the time, and wastewater was not updated. So that one has become quite dated because the previous update in 2004, you're getting close to 20 years since that. So my suspicion is that there was an update at that time. We can confirm that, but I can't quantify it off the top of my head.
No, and that's fine. Thank you. I just looked back and I had a note that it was something, a note to self to look into, and then I never did. So I thought I would ask it here. So I'm just curious about that. And then in terms of engagement with the key stakeholder group, I mean, just sort of what I'm sort of hearing through various presentations is more a desire for us to look at either decreasing DCCs. And so I think as you go into those conversations, you know, if it's the case of doing affordable rentals, then I sort of understand that, because when we partnered with the not-for-profit sector, we looked at ways to, you know, contribute to projects in some regard. So it'll just be interesting to see what sort of feedback you get from the key stakeholder groups, because right now, with the way that the real estate industry is going, all I hear is don't add more cost to things, and it'll become cost prohibitive to develop. But then we have to go and look at property taxes, and then you know, and then it comes to a point where our residents can only afford to pay so much in taxes. So it'll be interesting just to see how those conversations go in June. I don't really have a question. It's just, what do you think you're going to hear, I guess?
Yeah, to comment, Your Worship, it's you know, the development industry, yes, you're correct, doesn't enjoy the idea of paying additional fees. You know, it's typically you know, interesting conversation. I think at this point in time, it's important for the district to kind of weigh its fees against other things that impact the industry as well too, such as the improvement of the timing of development approvals, and you know, how that factors into the bottom line. I think overall, you know, due to the increased costs in land, I mean, there is the opportunity for a lot of profit currently in the development industry. You know, the housing market is hotter than it's ever been. And I would point to the process I noted at the end of the presentation there for the DCC reductions bylaw. And that is an opportunity for council to reduce or waive DCCs for developments that you would qualify as affordable housing. So that's where you could work with other partners, and it is open to council to define what they would refer to as affordable housing. We have metrics that we've worked with in the past, and using CMHC, it's you know, 30% of the median household income of the community, or below kind of the posted market rates for that time. So there are measurements that can be used to kind of identify affordable housing and slate that for DCC reduction. And I'd recommend that as the ministry approved process, and the cleanest and consistent way to do that, rather than kind of ad hoc DCC reductions being provided by council to particular developments. I will also note that for developments in progress, there's something referred to as an in-stream protection for 1 year. So if a development or a developer has an application that is in stream, and that would be one that is accepted for building permit, rezoning, and or development variance permit, or subdivision, that, you know, they will receive 1 year of protection from the DCC rates upon the time of adoption. So if you're to think about the impact of DCCs, once the bylaw is adopted, any in-stream DCC eligible projects will be, you know, protected for up to 1 year, and then, you know, new projects as they apply will then have the DCCs imposed. So I think it is about striking a balance, as you noted. Any costs that are waived or reduced in terms of DCCs, or you know, reductions to the numbers presented tonight, have to be made up through other taxation, gas tax, etc. So that's something for council to consider and deliberate on. So you can reduce the proposed DCCs as well by increasing the municipal assist factor, and that would be my recommendation, because it's transparent in how the assist factor actually increases, and you can see the reduction, and essentially that is a subsidy to the development industry to reduce their overall costs of infrastructure.
Okay, thank you very much, Heffernan. That Mr. Heffernan, that really helps. It's just always looking at what some of the available tools are, so I appreciate that. Okay, so I see Councillor Bateman and Councillor St. Pierre have questions, so I'll go to Councillor Bateman first.
Okay, I'll jump in and bravely risk looking like a fool here, but first of all, it's been a decade since the last time we updated these DCCs. Will these be in effect for the next 10 years? Do you anticipate?
Good question. So the ministry recommends that you conduct a major DCC update every 3 to 5 years. So it's been quite a long time. And you can conduct minor updates, in less time than that. Some local governments do it every kind of 2 years. They might do a minor update, just, inflate costs and take off projects that have been completed. So our advice is to update it more regularly, and that will typically result in lower jumps in costs. So, the longer you leave it, the more likely you're to get a bigger swing. In this case, for the time that it's been, I mean, the swing is actually not that extreme, considering that we're also adding stormwater and parks to the mix. So that's a consideration as well. But yes, I would advise in terms of like doing it more regularly to avoid kind of big jumps in costs.
So I guess a community like Colwood, which is, I understand it and Langford represent 50% of all new development in the CRD. They're really missing an opportunity here. Or is that a strategy to attract development?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Bateman. I mean, it is, Langford, I think, has its DCCs pretty up to date. I'm not sure what date I had there, so they're actually kept theirs pretty up to date. I believe Colwood is actually looking towards doing a DCC update relatively soon. So in cases where you would look at lowering your DCC rate, you typically see that high municipal assist factor applied in communities that are struggling to attract growth. So it can be an incentive if you are in a more competitive environment. However, most local governments are not experiencing this in the capital region. I don't believe Souk is either. Pretty sure you're not. And for that reason, it's part of the cost of doing business. So it is a tool and something for council to consider, and that's why the province provides that mechanism with the assist factor for council's discretion. But most DCC assist factors are between kind of 1% and 10% in most communities we work with, and when they're higher than that, it's typically due to an inability to attract growth.
Right. Okay. Final thought related to the stakeholders. I'm wondering. There are a number of significant ones: Victoria Residential Builders Association, the Vancouver Island Construction Association. I don't know, you've chosen 3 particular stakeholders. I'd also recommend our Souk Land Use and Development Committee has some true pros on it, and they might have some thoughts.
Through the chair to Councillor Bateman. Yes, that was some good points. We'll take that into consideration as well. And the plan going forward is to work with staff to identify a broader group of stakeholders too. So those were kind of 3 examples, but we'd also hope to extend the invitation directly to developers working in the community as well as some of those other organizations. So we're hoping for more targeted invite as well. So those are currently working in developing in Souk or building homes will be invited to participate.
All right. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Over to Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the presentation. It was informative last time. It was informative again today. I have 2 questions. One has to do with the DCC reduction bylaw they could potentially use for affordable housing and is considered by the province to be an appropriate tool for DCC reductions. I was curious as to whether or not those bylaws could also include, for example, commercial or industrial if the community actually is hoping to attract that sort of development, or is the provincial tool strictly for affordable housing?
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre. Yes, that's a good question. So it is not strictly for affordable housing. Legislation outlines 4 categories in which DCC reductions can be considered, and that is for for-profit affordable rental, not-for-profit affordable rental, small lot subdivision, and development designed to result in a lower infrastructure impact. So the 4th one could be a potential avenue to explore reduced DCCs for commercial and industrial development.
So if
but
I
then
understand
again,
correctly,
sorry, you know, ideally that would be connected though to, you know, a tangible I guess, decrease on the impact of infrastructure.
so if I understand correctly, if a business was to develop a property and manage their wastewater efficiently through whatever means, or otherwise reduce impact on our infrastructure, they could be potentially someone that we could consider DCC reductions in our bylaw for, in order to encourage that type of development. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. My second question had to do with the way that the different categories are calculated. Obviously, you have 3 categories that are meters squared. And I know this is late in the game, but I was curious, why is it that the residential are not also considered meters per square? I would imagine there'd be a fairly high correlation between the numbers of meters, the size of the property, the size of the home, and the impact on infrastructure. But is that not the case?
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre. Yes, you know, there's some reasons for that, so I'll walk through that. You know, the difference between the rates are based on impact to infrastructure. And yes, with a single detached home, you could have a pretty wide range, and yeah, a larger home would typically have suites and, you know, might have, you know, more people living there and a bigger impact, although not necessarily the case. There's many large houses with few people living there. So it is a range. It reflects kind of a range for each of those uses. Same with commercial. There's a pretty broad spectrum. So for the ease of administration and you know, a recommendation for ourselves and also from the province, it's standardized into kind of more discrete, you know, categories basically by land use. And the difference between why we would look to charge on a lot basis for a single detached versus a meter basis for like a multifamily unit is due to timing of development. So the Local Government Act allows local governments to collect DCCs at 1 or 2 times, and that's at time of subdivision and time of building permit. So once the lots have been subdivided for single detached, you know how many units are actually going to exist, how many lots there are. So that's I guess, good fiscal management to kind of get the money up front to provide those services as soon as possible so that they're in your pocket and you can actually support that development. B, it encourages developers actually to pay the DCCs rather than the builder, who might be you know, potentially a homeowner at that point too. So it keeps the cost with those who benefit from the development, and that's why it occurs at that time. For the second ones, why we advise at charging that at time of building permit is because in many cases for multifamily, commercial and industrial developments, you won't know the actual size of the development until it's constructed or the number of units that you actually have. So that in that case too, it's waiting to determine the actual scale of what's being built. So you collecting at subdivision, it's more challenging to kind of estimate the overall impacts at that time.
Perfect. So if I understand correctly, it's easier to actually measure, get an appropriate cost earlier in the game with lots rather than an unknown size of the building. Thanks very much.
It's also an easier, it's easier for staff to administer in that way as well.
Great. Okay, any other questions from members of council? Councillor Lajeunesse, please.
Yeah, I'm just going to attempt to do a better job of showing my ignorance than Councillor Bateman did. And I'm just going to ask if you could provide some definition around the assistance factor, the assist factor, and how are those rates set?
Through the chair to Councillor Lajeunesse, yes. So the assist factor is like a purely discretionary policy decision made by council. So it's in legislation, and DCC legislation is kind of built in the 70s. It's pretty dated, and you know there's a lot of gray space in it. And one of the things they note in there is the municipal assist factor, which is the opportunity for council to provide an assist to development. And it's in legislation, it's required that there must be a minimum assist of 1% and a maximum assist of 99%. And it's a pure policy decision based on what you feel the rates are and you know, the impacts on the development industry. So in a lot of cases, it's a tool where, you know, if council felt the rates were too high or the relative rates, compared to other neighboring communities or to the services being provided were too great. It's a purely political policy decision to provide essentially a discount or a subsidy to the development industry through that assist. And as I noted before, the assist must be made up. So the DCCs must be made whole. So any money that you take out of the DCC pot that would be used to pay for the infrastructure that's been identified must be made up through another non-DCC revenue source. So gas tax monies, general revenues, just a non-DCC pay source. So by increasing the assist factor, it doesn't just go away. It has to be made up by the district at that time. And we would suggest that if you were to apply the assist factor, that on the back end financial end, when you went to collect your DCCs, if you increase it to 20%, you'd have the developer put in their 80%, and then there'd be a trigger for the local government for SUC to just provide that extra 20% of the municipal assist if that was identified. So same process if it's 1%, if it's 20%, but that way the money going into the DCC reserves is the same in the end. So that the program can actually be built and implemented in a consistent fashion and in the appropriate time frame.
Thank you.
That's very helpful. Okay, anything else for Mr. Heffernan? Okay, well, thank you very much for your very thorough presentation and your time with us this evening. We appreciate it, and we'll see you again in the next month or so.
Sounds great. Well, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, look forward to hearing if you're wishing to proceed to consultation at this point. And yeah, look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Okay, members of council, so we've received our report. Over to Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm just going to move the recommendation that the council direct staff to proceed with the draft development cost charge program public engagement with the development community as presented.
Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor St. Pierre. Is there a seconder? It's basically the recommendation in your report, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Okay, to speak to it, any comments to motivate on the motion, Councillor St. Pierre?
No, I think that we can look forward to the public engagement to give us some more information from the development community at this point in time and move the process along.
Okay, Councillor Bateman, any comments?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I wouldn't mind hearing from the Land Use and Development Committee on this subject. If Councillor St. Pierre, you can spare 20 minutes of your 10. I don't know how long it would take, but after witnessing the secondary suite discussion, I'm very interested to hear what your people have to say.
You noted. I'll leave it with Councillor St. Pierre to take that back and to work with staff on how they can incorporate into the upcoming agenda. Anything further from other members of council? Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? And that's unanimous. So I can't see all of your hands, everybody, so I'm kind of going on other nonverbal cues, like a shoulder or something that you might be moving. So if I am calling out your vote incorrectly, then please just call out, okay? All right, next up is 13.1, which is our zoning amendment bylaw 817. So this has come to us already, but I'll turn it over to staff, please, for any introduction here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Mr. Paolo.
No, that's quite all right. I don't have a formal PowerPoint presentation tonight. Again, as mentioned, this is coming forward after our resolution from May 10th. So in the report, I've just provided a bit of a further analysis of what potential impacts this zoning amendment would have. So based on that, there's 8 parcels that have been identified in the RU1 zoning that would be affected, and only one of those parcels isn't currently located within the ALR parcel layer. So as I mentioned in the report, there is a bit of a constraint for development on this property. It doesn't have a developed road. It does have a legal road, but not developed. So there's a number of steps that would need to occur before we would have full-scale development that would potentially benefit from this. So not seeing that as being a major issue for this moving forward. The other zone that this affects is the RU3. So that one has a number of parcels that would potentially be impacted by that. So from our analysis, what we've been able to identify is that there's 119 parcels altogether within the RU1 and the RU3 zones that would have an impact. Specifically, the RU3, there's 10 parcels that could benefit from the changes in this bylaw for small suites as well. So the way that we have the wording specifically, it's not to reference just manufactured homes, but one additional dwelling unit. So that would then capture any of the regulations currently or in future put forward by the ALC, and so that we wouldn't have to come back at a future date and then make further amendments. Our zoning bylaw in our definitions section recognizes dwelling units to include suites as well as manufactured homes. So the main issue that's been brought forward to staff recently under 2 building permit applications is the ability to locate a manufactured home as an additional dwelling on an ALR parcel. Our current bylaws restrict that, which is allowed. Municipalities are allowed to have further restrictive provisions than what the ALC is providing for. However, as we know, the current review by the ALC is looking at extending those provisions to allow for manufactured homes when it's not just for farm help, that's to assist with additional family members that would want to reside on the parcel. So these proposed changes are looking at allowing for that to occur. And so staff tonight are seeking support for first and second reading of the bylaw and to move forward with posting for notice of a public hearing to be scheduled as well. And that's my summary.
Thank you very much.
Changes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting, but thank you, Mr. Powell, for your presentation. Any further follow-up questions? We had some information on this 2 weeks ago. Anything further from tonight? Okay, so the recommendation is that council give first and second reading to the bylaw cited as zoning amendment bylaw number 817-600-87-2021. Look for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Anything further on the motion? Okay, seeing none,
Just
all
briefly,
those. Go ahead.
Just very briefly. I'm really impressed with how quickly staff moved on this and the quick turnover on this particular item. Kudos to them because we needed this quickly and they did it very fast.
That they do. Okay, well said, Councillor. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Not seeing any opposed. The second part of that is that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act. So look for a mover by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. We're all clear on the public hearings. So I'll just call. Is there all those in favor, please? And none opposed. That's unanimous as well. Thank you. Okay, so moving into new business, that'll be the supplementary package. So the first one here is 14.1, and it's a notice of motion from Councillor St. Pierre. And just because of time constraints, we need to look at waiving notice. So the first motion here that I'll ask is that council waive the requirement, waive the notice so we can deliberate on this notice of motion.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor second here. So I know that there was a timing issue for us to turn this around, so that's why that's done. So thank you for that. I'll call the question. All those in favor of waiving notice? Anyone opposed? Councillor Beddoes, were you opposed or in favor? In favor. Okay. That's
yeah,
unanimous.
sorry, I got these. I'm on the wrong machine again. I have to use my iPad once again. So yeah, I'm okay.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, and so now Councillor St. Pierre is making the motion that council support an application for a healthy public policy grant to support CRFAIR's Food Policy Task Force in establishing regional capacity for food policy at the local government level, and that council directs staff to work with the Developme Group to submit the grant application, and that council directs staff to provide overall grant management. So that is the motion from Councillor St. Pierre. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bateman. Okay, so that part of it's been done. So Councillor St. Pierre, I'll turn it to you to speak to your notice of motion, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So this particular motion is a result of work towards developing a regional food policy council. This will actually help address our strategic priorities in terms of actually having a food policy council, and will actually defray the costs and also the staff costs in terms of how much time it takes. So as Councillor Bateman had noted previously in correspondence, there was the opportunity for grants to potentially help us with that work. But as Mr. McInnes, our CEO, pointed out, we would have to take something off our priority list in order to make room. At this point, we have a strong partner with CR Fair to help us establish at least the baseline and some of the terms of reference for a regional food policy council, which is quite a bit a more complex entity. But we wouldn't have to actually pay the whole thing or have all of our staff do the work. Instead, we actually would be providing some leadership and management of the grant through our staff. But this would allow our staff resources to be employed most effectively towards this particular strategic priority. Now, as it happens, the reason for a regional food policy council, because I expect that question to come up, is that the food shed or the region is actually a much better measure for a food policy council. The policies that we want in terms of a food system are actually going to be for the whole region, likely. And some of the questions are actually across many jurisdictions, provincial, federal, VHA, and more. And as such, having a larger voice at the table to basically do that advocacy work makes a lot of sense. It also makes more sense to actually have policies developed that can then be disseminated to all the various jurisdictions and local governments instead of doing it more piecemeal. It also reduces our costs again. So in terms of, any sort of actual cost for the Food Policy Council, that would be across 13 different local governments, ideally. At this point in time, this is all up to the task force to basically use a very excellent model from the Comox Valley, because they've done something very similar recently. And ideally, we'll be using the work that they've done and presenting terms of reference and some sort of idea of what the governance structure would look like, and then approaching the various districts and local governments to basically see what they think of it. So nothing will be written in stone at the early stages, but all that work needs to be done prior to actually moving forward. And it's a very complicated entity. And I'm open to any questions if I can answer them.
Okay, any questions or comments for Councillor St. Pierre? Councillor Bateman and then Beddoes.
Well, you said comments, so I'll just comment and say.
I said comments or questions of Councillor St. Pierre.
I have no questions, so I'll save it for afterwards.
Well, we're on the vote, so
Okay.
It's been moved and
all
seconded,
right.
so it is the time to comment.
Yeah.
Or ask a question.
I just think we've made some great progress from when CR Fair brought the regional food ideas to us in 2019, and thank you, Councillor St. Pierre, for taking us to this next step.
Excellent. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, the only question is not for Councillor St. Pierre, but for staff. What sort of staff impact does this have? How much time are we looking at? Do we have the resources to do this partnership? Or I mean, every time I deal with staff, it sounds like we've a chock-a-block full. So I'd just like a comment from the CAO. I'm not against this. I just like to know what impact does it have on our staff time to assist, because it's not clear to me exactly what the district is providing other than some assistance in writing grants, but I'm not sure there. So over to our CAO, if we could explain to me a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Beddoes, yeah, we are not budgeting any staff resources for this other than a couple of days to manage the grant, get the grant application in, and then manage the grant. So all of this will come back to council at some point, I am assuming, and either make it onto or will not make it onto the strategic priorities chart. But there was just an opportunity to apply for this grant at this time. I've had some, I think Councillor St. Pierre and I and the working group have a sound understanding of this is not a priority for SUC at this point, but there just needed to be a lead organization to put the grant application in. Just one further note that I think is important. This governance model, where it takes it outside of the constraints of the community charter and the speed that that stuff works at, I like this model, and I think assisting this model is a better model than keeping it within the restraints of the legislation that we have to work within.
Okay, so if I understand, it's very minimal impact. So I appreciate that, and thank you for that explanation. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yes, and I expect that council will ultimately make the decision if we do want to put more resources into this.
Okay.
Excellent. Nope, good question. Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
I could add to this that this doesn't actually represent, for example, a local food policy council if our council or future councils decide that we'd like to support that sort of entity, you know, either through SUC-FUCHI or whatever would be appropriate. It's different beastie, and again, the actual grant writing itself, because I don't think that was necessarily answered. As I understand it, the heavy lifting will be done by CR Fair and not by our staff. So.
Okay, thank you for those points of clarity, Councillor St. Pierre. And I just wanted to, oh, I'm hitting something on the screen here, sorry. Just wanted to thank you for following up with this and finding the opportunity and bring it to council tonight. So well done there. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please. And anyone opposed? Nope. So that's unanimous as well. Thank you, everyone. So our next item here is just a draft letter. So as you are aware, we have been advocating on a AVIC resolution that impacted our community with the wolf hunting. And so for those of you that are attending AVIC, you may be wondering, why is this coming now? Well, in part, I wasn't entirely sure how the voting on resolution process was going to unfold exactly at this year's AGM. And I was also waiting for a response to our advocacy letter, a letter that we sent, or I sent to the minister back in February. So that arrived late last week. And basically, in a nutshell, and because we're scrambling to get things done here, they're not looking to change anything. And so the reason why this letter is here was because I wanted to check into council and seek your support to send this letter out. Otherwise, and this is to other member municipalities on the island, obviously, and it's showing our support as a council. So I didn't want to send this out without having your endorsement on the letter. But before I ask this, I just want to ask our staff in terms of timing. This would need to go out like first thing tomorrow morning. And is that possible? Because what I have learned is that the voting on the resolutions closes tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I thought it was a little bit longer, but it's tomorrow at 3, I believe. All the voting on all the resolutions has to be done. So in order for this to have any impact, it basically has to go out first thing in the morning, and I don't know if that's possible.
Yes, your worship, will get that out first thing.
Oh, so it is. Okay. So then I'll just look if council is I'll just open it up and then see. Basically, I'm seeking council support to send out this letter. So a resolution that I would make is that council support the draft letter, the letter. Councillor St. Pierre, you're okay to move that?
I'm okay to move that.
Okay, I'll second it. Any comments from anyone? Councillor St. Pierre?
I think it's appropriate to motivate this and to ask the province to have some actual science-based rules around the hunting of wolves and the killing of wolves. I think it's just very odd that it hasn't happened up till now, because most other animals are protected by the province and considered to be, for whatever reason, the province's property. I think it's just a blind spot in legislation that needs to be addressed, but I think it's good to follow up.
Okay, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I'm in support of continuing this process to seek a moratorium, just a short-term moratorium until the science is done. Now, the response from the province claims that the science is being done, and they're continuing to ensure better harvest data collected annually from hunters and trappers, and they'll continue to ask staff to further review the biological data. In the meantime, our minimal population of Vancouver Island wolves are still being hunted and trapped without a proper and full knowledge from what I understand. So moratorium, I'm always for the pause. So till we get some better data.
And I recognize that those attending AVIC will have the ability to vote on the resolutions independently. It's just when I send out a letter and I reference all of council, I want to ensure that you're in the loop here. So that's why the language in this letter is basically District of Sioux Council writes in support of this resolution, as opposed to myself as mayor writing in support of this resolution. So that's why it's here, and we'll see where this goes. I just look at it, we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources with Wild Sioux, the great work they're doing, coexisting with carnivores. We're mindful of how we develop all of those things and the need to protect our wild spaces. So I'm just, I have this here just to continue with this advocacy, and that's why it's here tonight. And those of you attending will be able to vote accordingly. But I'm referencing our council, so that's why it's here. Okay, so for your information more than anything, and your support in sending it out. I didn't want to send out a letter and then have council say, I don't support that letter that went out. So that's why I'm just trying to find a way to get the communication going here. Okay, all right, enough said. I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so moving back into the agenda here, just bear with me, I'm just switching screens here. Okay, so we're into correspondence now. So the first one here is information regarding pickleball from Ms. Darby. And we also heard Ms. Erickson address us earlier. Since we had deliberated on the grant, some new information has come to us. And so Ms. Erickson has highlighted just the challenges now where on the grant funding that we gave and how that needs to be repurposed in a different way. So I'm going to need to just get clarity from staff on what our process is in that case. Can council just resolve that they use the funds to, as they can and do fundraising for the other areas? So we just need to understand that a little bit. And then in the conversation or the emails that I've received from Ms. Darby, which you may have also received, is that as work is happening over in Sun River on the multi-sport box, is there some way to consider installing a pickleball court there as well? So my understanding, and Councillor Beddoes may have more knowledge on this, is that the new multi-sport box will be able to handle pickleball. Like, there's still the layout and all that is still being determined, but it would be the case when players show up to play, they would need to set up the netting and take it down. So it's not, you can't just go show up and play. There's some setup and take down.
Sure, if you'd like me to comment
on that surface. Yeah, if you want to just add a bit more to that.
I did talk at length with Steve Knoke about it, and it is not ideal to use the sports spots for pickleball. It can be used, but it is you know, trying to use a motor sailor as a sailboat for speed. It just doesn't work very well, but it can be used with a lot of effort. But the other thing in talking with the commission is it's a very easy thing to, when they level for the sports box, to without any additional cost, have a space beside it for a future pickleball court or tennis courts, whatever we wish. The only problem with that is the type of ground that's there might need some infill. So if we did go to a pickleball court sometime in the future, we'd have to round up some money. Basically, that. But there is a location for it, and I think Sea Park would be very much in favor of proceeding with that on the district's behalf, providing there was some funds. So I think it's all possible, and I think just as my 2 bits as from the commission is, I think it'd be desirable in the long run to have pickleball courts other than on that property on Throop Road. There's a lot of speculation about you know, the road going through there and losing the parking and all that stuff. So I think it's probably something we should pursue. I'm not sure at this point in time how we pursue it, but I think there is a need, and that's what Sea Park does, is to provide these opportunities for people in the community. But it's the money question I have some trouble with, but that's why we have staff, and that's why we have other councillors to put their 2 bits sort of in there. But I think it's worth pursuing. I like this this letter. She put a lot of stuff in there, and it's not going to happen overnight, but I think that might be a way we want to go.
Thank you, Councillor Battles. It's very helpful there. It's also, I think the surface, right, is not the best. It's because it's cement that's going to be in the lacrosse box.
Yeah,
and
it's not the ideal thing for pickleball. I think they'd be better served with a proper court next door to them. And from what I understand, talking with this group as well, it is pretty up and coming. Up and down the island, they're just going gangbusters with this sport. And as we all know, that the people in Vancouver Island as well as this community are aging out, and it's a very good sport for the older folk and like me, I guess. But it's good for everybody. It seems and there's a good thing in that letter, which I really thought was good, is we're doing the sports box in conjunction with the new school that's eventually going to go in there. And again, the pickleball courts, or whatever we're going to call them, would be a great addition for the school and sharing as we do with the school district. So there's some good points here. I think we should pursue it.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor St. Pierre.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the information in the letter too. I was curious also about the schools, and what I know there's always challenges in terms of doing this sort of thing, but given that it's a multi-generational sport, I was curious as to whether or not there might be some room for some advocacy or reaching out to the school district and seeing whether or not there's any interest in making courts available at the schools, because quite frankly, that would allow us to have many courts in various neighborhoods. And I think putting something at the multi-sport box is fantastic, and having this Sea Park take the lead is wonderful. Just curious as to whether or not there's another opportunity we might not be able to explore.
My only comment back to you on that, Councillor, is that I believe the students from Journey Middle School use the courts on Throop Road. Like there isn't another court. I'm not aware of one at EMCS. Like I've walked around that school. I don't think there's a court there at all. And I'm fairly certain that Journey Middle School doesn't have one. Like they go over and they use the Throop courts, and none of the elementary schools. I can't comment on. I don't think Poye has one. I've been in the back where they've redone that. Like we just don't have them. And Councillor Beddoes is correct. I mean, anytime I go down Throop Road or you drive down, there's people playing pickleball all the time, more so than tennis. So
yeah,
you know, to hear that the community association is preserving tennis over pickleball, I mean, it's fine. It's their land. It's just I've never seen anyone play tennis there but I've seen a lot of people play pickleball there, like all the time through COVID, all the time. It is, and different ages and so forth. So it's a shame actually that I was sort of thinking, oh, that we get those 3 courts done, but then we need to look at other courts, because I think, you know, right, like you need to find, but I mean, if they're not willing to advance them, it's just we're stuck. But that's where I think even if we had the 3 courts, I think there's a need for more courts in Sun River and other possibilities as well. It is a growing sport and it's affordable. Like you need a racket, some good shoes, and you can get out and have some fun with some friends and all of that, without having to, like, do I buy the set of golf clubs and I might not ever play or even like the sport. Like it's an easy sport to get into, and it's, which is great, right? And that's why it's so popular. So that's the only downside, is I don't feel we have an abundance of courts available, which is why there's such a demand to play.
I'd just like to follow up on that. I actually knew that they didn't have the courts. I was just curious as to whether or not, as Councillor Beddoes has suggested, we might be able to help with grants or financing to actually help them get the courts and have some sort of partnership with the people, or I should say the school district, which has land well situated in various neighborhoods, to actually have the courts as a community amenity.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We're in that, we've signed off on that refreshed MOU agreement. So we're just looking to find ways to engage with the school district. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunities to do that. I think it's just the timing to get there. Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse, and then I'll go back to Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, just in response to your comment about no courts or anything at any of the schools, there used to be, before the current Edward Milne Community School was built, I think there were 4 tennis courts there, and they were very well utilized by various members of the community, and they do have a lot of flat land. I'm not sure whether it's all utilized to its full extent, but I think the idea of having some more community amenities on the school grounds would be an excellent idea, because they have land available. It's flat, and it wouldn't cost that much to pave a small section, put up some fencing.
Yeah, maybe. I know that the land that Edward Milne has sort of been saved for necessary expansion of the school, right? Like Edward Milne was designed in a way, as I understand it, Councillor Bateman may know a bit more, but the intent is to expand the school to meet. So that's where I think we would run into a challenge in finding location, because that high school will need to expand. And probably the middle school as well. And the others, as you know, we're hoping to get a new school in Souk because of the enrollment size. So that would be the only challenge, is that they're going to need it for either portables in the short term, or capital expansion in the hopefully not too long term. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I like the idea of looking around for other locations, but let's face it, there's only so many grants out there. And if we're going to pursue our grant, I just assume we try and pursue one for sort of our property, as opposed to doing a partnership with the schools. A lot of the reasons for what you say, first of all, they would need money. They're not going to do it for free. I'd like to do it with our capabilities. We have it. Let's start with Sea Park or the sports box area and work backwards. So I think the idea is, let's get something going, and let's pick a spot. Let's ask for a grant, or whatever council wants. But I would not want to be talking about this 4 years from now. I think we should move on it quickly.
Yeah, I agree. So in terms of advancing this, I'm just trying to think of logistics. Because Councillor Beddoes, you're the chair of Sea Park. So is it the case where you would want a resolution from our council to the commission? Or is this something you could discuss, like we could discuss at the next commission meeting?
Yeah, I think it'd be best if we just put it on the agenda for discussion. And unfortunately, as you know, Steve is leaving tomorrow, and he's put a lot of work into that sports box, and he was the one that suggested that he clear a space beside them, and he was all for it. It doesn't mean that the other staff would not be that way, but I would think with our partnership with the CRD through CPART, I think that'd be worth a discussion point. I think we have to start looking at, we relied on a community association to supply us with all sorts of lands in the past, but I think we may have to branch out and start looking at doing some of these things ourselves, because the community is growing. And I was actually a little embarrassed when I heard about all other communities and what they have in the way of pickleball courts, and we have this community of 15,000 and growing leaps and bounds, and we have to rely on an old tennis court to do this. So yeah, I don't want to see us shoot all our everything every which way. Let's concentrate on getting a triple court in an area that the land that we own already, and rely on us, and maybe JDF will get them to kick in their 25%. So
Okay, so maybe there's some, I just want to find something so that council,
well,
I guess the question is for council, you know, do we support in principle the idea of installing pickleball courts on the Sun River lands?
You could ask
like,
for
are we there yet?
a resolution that you instruct CPARC through me to put it on the agenda to see the feasibility of a pickleball court next to the sports box, and get some comment back on, because there's somebody looking at the construction of the sports box now. I would think they'd be able to comment on whether it's feasible or not, and I think that would be a good starting point. So I don't mind putting it on the agenda.
So maybe something like council direct staff to forward this correspondence to the CPARC Commission for their comments, for their review and input, for their review and feedback. We could do something like that.
I don't mind, you know, when it comes up, I certainly know the discussion on it, and I'd be more than willing to pursue it, see what the other commissioners say, and yeah, sounds good.
Okay, we'll do something like that then, that council direct staff to forward this item of correspondence to the CPARC Commission for their review and feedback, something like that. So
Sure.
Councillor Beddoes, you're okay with that as a motion?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, do I have a
I know
seconder?
it needs to be done.
Okay, perfect. Seconded by Councillor Bateman. Thank you. Any comments on this motion? So we'll get some more information and then find out where we land on this. Okay, so Councillor Bateman, then St. Pierre.
Yeah, and I'll just, great directions here, but I'll also follow up with the EMCS Society and get some ideas around potential courts at EMCS.
Sounds good.
Okay, that sounds good. Councillor St. Pierre.
Much appreciate Councillor Beddoes' work and Councillor Bateman. I was going to ask about EMCS and maybe just following up on that, although I do agree with focusing on something we can actually achieve. So thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. In terms of a question I have for staff, so Ms. Erickson, as you know, joined us just to ask about how she could retain those funds and do other fundraising. And she had a question here. Oh no. I've sort of clicked on something and now I can't see anybody. Sorry about this. Oh, there we are. And she had a question there, and I know that she.
Maybe let her speak, Mayor, and.
This was here, it's just my question, I'll bring pickleball here in the meantime with your grant money, is there a contingent? So she's, okay, so as Ms. Erickson had noted that the funding that they had, there's been a commitment that has changed. And so they need, the way that they were allocated the funds was going to change and be repurposed, and also there's a need for more funds. So is it the case? So my question to staff is that with the grant money, how does that work when we grant out funds for a specific purpose and then the recipient needs to use it in a different way? Hi, Ms. Gray.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you,
Do
Your Worship.
you mind me just answering that? The purpose hasn't changed at all. Just the focus now is on developing pickleball before the Sea Park. Before those courts could be done, 2 years will go by. We really need pickleball now. As soon as COVID regulations are off tomorrow, those courts are going to be busier than ever. And with your grant, some of it is being used to resurface the back court for tennis and pickleball, so it will be safe. But the front court is unsafe, and it really needs resurfacing before we do anything. And I say, let's just go ahead and get it done. We've started a GoFundMe campaign today that's already getting donations. Mike Hicks had asked to talk if we don't get enough money, you know, which we didn't from Souk Community Association, that's just enough for one court, to talk to him. So I think maybe we could get this going fast.
Yes, no, I understand that, Ms. Erickson. I'm just trying to sort out the process that we need to follow here.
I get it. Yeah. So really that grant was for prep work and some of the work that's being done on the back court now. But now we'll use it on the front. So we have to do this.
Yes, no, I understand, Ms. Erickson. I'm just trying to iron out a process here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you
for that. Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to clarify, the community grant policy states section 6B talks to the fact that if what the original grant, the project the original grant was funding has changed, then that applicant just needs to come forward to council with a request for their new project change, and that would need to be supported by council in order for that funding to be used for a different type of project. As the applicant has stated, the funding was for the resurfacing of the current courts, not about funding for addition. Well, I guess, sorry, I'll leave it up to council if they would choose to award additional funding to this organization for further or different projects. But as far as the community grant is concerned, the funds were allocated for the project as described in their application. So if that project has changed, then council will just need to endorse this change.
Okay, so given that Ms. Erickson has presented to us tonight, then council could pass a resolution that takes the change in mind, and we could do that this evening.
Correct, yes, the council's support.
Yeah. It's still like the purpose is still for pickleball in that location. It's just that how the funds are going to be used would be different. So when you get the final report in, it's not going to match the grant application, but that's why I just wanted to note there is a change in how the funds are going to be used, but it is for the same purpose of pickleball. Okay, so that's where council, right, okay, so in terms of a motion, I may need help from corporate services. Is that council supports that? I'm just looking for some help from corporate services on a resolution that would provide the necessary direction to staff under the terms of the grant policy.
Can I just say it's on the same property, just a different court? It's going to be used for the same purpose, but
we understand that,
okay.
Ms. Erickson. I just need to get the right language in so that it meshes with the policy.
Thank
you. Just over to our corporate officer. Can you just suggest?
So if what Ms. Erickson said is in fact true, it meets the intent of the policy. It said funds must be used for the purpose for which they requested. If the originally intended purpose cannot be carried out, then council must do something. But if it's still for the same purpose, I don't know that council needs to make any adjustments.
Okay, so that's the part I just wanted to be 100% on. So it sounds like we don't need to do a resolution then. Ms. Gray has her hand up. Go ahead, Ms. Gray.
Sorry about that. Through your worship, I was just reading their application. And in their application, they referred to the back court. And so just to clarify, if they now would prefer to use that money on the front court, maybe it could just be a simple resolution from council that the the project be changed from the back court to the front court, because they did specify the back court in their grant application earlier this year.
Or can we just say to be used on either and the back or front court if things change again? Would that suffice?
Yes, your work about let corporate services weigh in if they want to, but from a finance standpoint, that's acceptable.
Okay. Is that okay, corporate officer? Like maybe they'll just make a resolution then that council receive the pickleball update for information, and we support and council supports the community grant funds to be used on either the back or front court as the pickleball group deems appropriate. I'm like writing this in my head. So I'll just ask, does that work, staff?
Yes, we'll word craft it with that intent.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just, the only thing missing here, and I'm not quite clear, because in talking with the community association, they were reluctant to do anything on that front court. So are they okay? I know they're not supplying any money, but it's still their court, it's still their land. Are they okay with the pickleball people updating that front court, which, you know, they didn't want to do?
My understanding is they kind of given permission based on the pickleball. It's up to the pickleball, because their understanding is that the road's going to be come through and the court's going to be dug up. So I guess
yeah,
that's where
I see. I got an email here that yeah, that's the intent. They got the okay, so I'm okay with it. I was just wondering how the community association was seeing it. So thanks.
Okay. So council, you're comfortable with that resolution I crafted in my, okay, so I'll look for a mover, please.
And just reword that back to you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mushata.
Wordsmith it a little bit. That council receive the letter for information and support the community grant awarded to suit pickleball for expanded use on either court.
Perfect. Thank you for your assistance
wow.
with that. Okay, that's moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. On the motion, any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous, thank you. And then in terms of additional funding, is council prepared to consider that at this time, or would you like to? We're hearing now that the funds that the community association had pledged earlier are no longer available. So the group is now looking to fundraise and or have also asked for any additional funds. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I'd like to leave it in the pickleball people's hands at the moment. They're, you know, that's what we ask, is that they try and solve their own problems. If they can get a GoFundMe page and some work on that, if they fall short by a few $1,000s, they could certainly come back to us, I would think, and I'd be happy to re-examine it. I don't know where we get the money from, but it's still possible. But they've got this thing moving now. They can use the original $6,000. They're getting organized, and let them run with it and see where we are.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Any other comments from members of council? Okay, so that is good. So we'll move on to the next item, which is item 15.2. This is sewer connection correspondence from the Perot's, and it's just an item that came forward requesting conversation here in regards to this, and so I just pulled it here, but it was more just, I don't know how to answer this question to a resident, so it's more we just need staff to reply back. Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, just to note that Mr. Carter did reply at some good length, so maybe he could share his thoughts.
Okay, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, no, thank you, Your Worship. No, the residents brought a good point up. I did put together quite a lengthy response, tried to put together as much detail as possible. So that response has been provided to the residents. They have acknowledged that and said they would reach out to me if they had any questions. And I had CC'd council on that response as well.
Okay, thank you for that, everybody then. So just a motion to receive, please. Motion to receive and file. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. And the other one is similar in that we all received quite a lengthy package from the strata owners. And so I believe our approving officer is handling this item, but if I could just get some clarity from staff. Again, it's another piece of, it's quite technical details, and so that's why it's here.
Yes, Your Worship, our approving officer has made contact with the president of the Strata Council. And this really, it's fairly complex the way that the Land Titles Acts, the Strata Property Act and the Local Government Act work in conjunction with the Strata Council in these issues. But at the end of the day, it's a responsibility of the approving officer under Section 77 of the Land Titles Act. So I fully anticipate that Mr. Mitten will deal with the issue, and if not, it'll come back to myself and possibly to council.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor St. Pierre.
I was curious when we received this package because it seemed to have it seemed to have legal implications. It was quite complex. Why is this not being dealt with in camera, and should we expect anything further of that nature?
Well, the letter was sent to us. So it's a public document now. They sent it in. It was on the public agenda and in our information package. So at this point, if legal gets involved, it will become an in-camera item, but that wasn't the spirit. That I don't believe the letter was given to us from the respondent.
If I can just add, we also did not include all of the attachments, only the initial 2-page email in your package. So that information, if requested by a member of the public, would be gone through and severed appropriately.
Like through the Freedom of Information legislation. So
no,
okay,
they would
so
be
again,
entitled to that information as part of the correspondence package, but it would take some time to sever that document. So we opted not to include it in the package, but we will go through and sever it if need be.
Understood. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, one of the points raised by the letter writer was, or the strata, is that the district has not ensured the development permit was executed as promised. So what is our general procedures regarding ensuring DPs meet their expectations?
So one of the things that was in the correspondence is they've quoted some stuff that's in some of our policy, but that quote also includes that we will follow any bylaws that apply. Not all of our standard bylaws apply when it's a strata application.
Okay. All right, Norm, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So motion to receive the item, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item 16 is council verbal reports. So look for members of council for any updates that you'd like to share since we last met. And whose hand is that? Councillor Beddoes, go ahead, please. You're on mute.
I know.
Oh, there you go.
Where's my little sign here? Hey, so there we go. Hey, no, I just, I'm sure everybody knows, but it's Steve Noki's last day at Sea Park tomorrow at 10:30. They're having a little coffee for him. And I got a card, and I sprung for a little gift certificate for the 17 mile for him. And I did that on my own hook because Steve's been one of the better people I've worked with in my lifetime. of just a super guy and very competent at what he does. So that's a loss to us to have him go to Esquimalt. But anyways, there's a coffee at 10:30 down at Sea Park, and I'm going to go down and wish him well. So.
Thank you for arranging that, Councillor Beddoes. He is going to be missed for sure, and unfortunately I'm in a CRD meeting, so I won't be able to join the festivities though, which is too bad. Other members of council for updates? Councillor St. Pierre, then La Jeunesse.
Just quickly, we had a meeting of the Land Use Development Committee, and it dealt with one of our ongoing strategic priorities, which was the dealing with secondary suites. The discussion was involved and complex, and a lot of good decisions, many good recommendations are going to be coming forward to council, and we can look forward to that. I was extraordinarily pleased with the expertise and the depth of discussion during that particular meeting, and I just wanted to comment on that, and thank you to the committee.
Oh, well done, Councillor St. Pierre, on your work there as well. Other updates from members of council. Councillor La Jeunesse, you are next.
Yeah, I just wanted to report on the Community Act Dev Committee's meeting on Friday that Peter Dukakis of WorkLink gave a presentation kind of outlining all of the services that that WorkLink offers, and everyone on the committee was simply blown away by the breadth of services that that WorkLink offers, including myself. I had no idea, and so I think Sue Welke is going to be putting together some info, and I hope that we can, as a district, can somehow support them with some marketing to get the word out as to just how extensive their services are. And so I think the Community Act Dev Committee will be on that, because it's quite something. The width and breadth of services that they offer.
Agreed. Thank you, Councillor La Jeunesse. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It was quite a presentation, amazing, and Councillor St. Pierre is right about the quality of that land use discussion. In addition to my usual rounds, I had my first opportunity to co-chair the Souk Homeless Coalition on May 11th, and in over my head, but some remarkable, there's Sherry Thompson and Melanie Cunningham and Mary Dunn and others. There's work ahead. It's a big vision, the Souk region without homelessness. And that, as we saw in that report from we received last month, that is much more than just the visible homeless. It's the people who are living on the edge of the next paycheck. So there will be a working group has been formed, and they will be developing a 3-year community plan to look at the broader implications of the unhoused. The Climate Action Committee meets tomorrow, and we're very happy to report that Margaret Critchlow has agreed pro bono, free of charge, to facilitate a meeting for us, a workshop, so that we can deliver what we promised to council by year end. And what else? Oh, I've been driving around town, just noting the remarkable busyness, the earth movers over at Drennan, and construction all over the place. It's the one thing I did note was the Felderhof Childcare Center, which is going ahead with, I think, 28 units. As we all know, we had some rather extensive conversations about it. We denied their parking variance. They've gone ahead and they've built that the parking spot in the backyard. And, I was out there Thursday at 4:30, and a car backed out of that parking lot. Someone came around the corner, it was not a near miss, but the car that turned off of Church onto Felderhof had to swing into the other lane to avoid the car backing out. So, you know, that sounds like I'm making that up, but I'm not. I witnessed it. And I think we need a sign, some signage up there, very clearly stating daycare in area, drive with full caution. Because I know the neighbors were concerned about that issue, and we all were. I think I forget what the vote count was, but I think that signage, traffic calming, daycare, drive with extreme caution and care is needed at that spot. Thank you. And good luck to the proponents, because 28 new daycare spots in Souk is a great thing.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. You may want to put in a service request using the online tool on our website. I happen to use that frequently when I'm out and about and notice different things, and it's a very useful tool. So I would suggest that perhaps. It is a challenge. I know Church Road well. My father lives there, and I was almost hit by 2 vehicles today trying to get out of his driveway onto Church Road by somebody coming down the hill speeding and somebody going up the hill speeding. So that could have been a bit nasty in general, whatever. Tough spot. Okay, so just a few updates. As you know, I've been Zooming with our Friendship City in Natori, Japan, and we have a meeting up this week. We have both communities have put together a bit of a video to show what cycling in our various communities look like. So with the help of Ms. Moog and some inspiration from Ms. Temple and some much needed help from the fire department, I was able to get my bike going because the intro has me riding my bicycle, and it's been some time, unfortunately, and I hate admitting to that since I've been on it, but we managed to pull it together. And so once the details are finalized, we'll share it with all of you just so you can see what I'm up to. Makes me look cooler than I am. So thanks, staff, for that. I mentioned some advocacy with UBCM. Last week was UBCM Advocacy Week. So there were meetings with about 1/3 of the MLAs, as well as our Premier, as well as Minister Osborne, Minister of Municipal Affairs. And so the talking points were on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and improving local government engagement. As the legislation takes into effect, there is a need to adopt a local government lens as the implementation unfolds. Another one was on local government finance. So this is an item that I've been working on for a couple of years, and it's how do we address the downloading of services or perceived downloading of services, and how do we finance and build communities that are livable and meet the needs of our communities while keeping you know what our options are: raise development fees or increase property taxes. And we know that those are our only 2 levers when we're not successful in grants. And so there is a policy paper that's being drafted now, and the intent is to work with the government, work with the province in finding new revenue sources that meet our needs. Those of you that are attending AVIC will see a couple of resolutions that have come forward out of other coastal communities that are sharing the same thing. And the third one was on strengthening community supports with the mental health and opioid crisis. So the work that's happening with Souk Shelter is very important, as well as in our community grants program. We funded several grants that we felt were important to fund, but not necessarily a local government mandate to fund. So where we're at, and I had a very good conversation with Minister Heyman, and he also suggested that Minister Malcolmson will be interested in meeting with local governments to find ways to do this together. So they're looking for our help as well. The mental health folio is a massive folio. And this is where I think we don't need to just accept the fact that this is a download we have to pay. It's more, here's what's happening in a community like ours. That's growing. We're rural, but we have urban influences. We don't have all the supports and services we need, but we have growing problems. We don't have them as much as, say, Vancouver does, but we have our own circumstances that it's just a number of zeros, right? Like in terms of population. and it's going to continue to grow. And I don't think we need to just say, okay, we'll fund this. I think it's more, let's try to identify solutions and work and reach out with the appropriate ministries in terms of how we can address these concerns together and what exactly we need. So I think there's an opportunity with what we learned through the grant program, the work that we're continuing to do throughout the community is to bring forward, again, like we did with healthcare, and advancing the primary care model. Here's a made-in-Souk solution that we think will work. And here's where we need provincial support to do this, because I don't feel it's our responsibility, but here's how we can address all of this together. And I think that's I'm excited, and they seem very receptive to, and they want to work with local governments. So we have a real opportunity now to work with the province to really help everyone in our community. And then the other file I'm immersing myself in is the whole e-com, the 911 expense that is going to come our way. We're doing our best to push back on that. So then it's the case of doing some digging to understand the different pieces, because it just seems the case that, get ready, here's an expense that you're going to need to pay, and it's over $300,000. So how do we find that year after year, along with all the other necessary things we need to do? It's just a challenge. Like, I just can't accept in finding that funds. Like, we need to find other ways. So continuing to do some more research there in terms of what we can do. And then there's different meetings that go around that. So there's of course everything else, but here's where we're at. I was invited and did a presentation to our local Rotary Club last week. So not the same as our typical lunch presentation, but it was still nice to connect with the Rotary Club and receive some interesting feedback that I'm continuing to process there. And otherwise, I just sometimes hear, oh, what is the council, or, no one's done this or that. But I think what all of our council and all of our staff have been doing is working very closely together in uncharted territory. The pandemic has forced us to deal with things that are not in our normal day-to-day a routine of dealing with DCCs and so forth. We're dealing with complicated issues, and it was a time where we needed to do so to keep our community strong. And so I just want to thank everyone, council and staff, for all the work that you're doing, because when you're not here in council meetings, you're finding other ways to reach out to community members and to continue to hear from people. I know staff or even some counselors, are faced with working from home while also homeschooling last year, caring for seniors, caring for other volunteers, doing food bank runs, finding ways to continuing. Like, these are all important things that keep our community safe and whole. So I just want to thank everyone for everything that you're doing, all of council and all of staff as well. And at the same time, while we're dealing with the pandemic, it's just getting on with the work that we need to do in challenging times, and finding ways to do that. And it is on Teams, but we know that there's a time where we're going to come back and we're going to have to all get used to each other again back in council chambers, which is great. So I look forward to that. And there'll be more information as it may be the case where council will be able to come back in person first. And that's where it's dealing with the room limitations and no more than 50 people in a room. So then how do you turn away someone who may have a very valid concern with a public hearing comments that are important? We can't turn someone away. So that's where maybe it's the case where we'll look at how that all phases back in. So if you haven't gotten your vaccine, the one thing I've learned from Island Health, if you or someone received a vaccine prior to April 1st, the system changed. Because call and book your appointment. So I'm going to use my dad as an example. I called and booked his appointment. I now need to register him into the system. I didn't think to do that because he already had his vaccine. So it's mainly the folks that are 75 and older. You still need to be registered to get that second dose. So everyone else, at one point, they kicked in the registration system where you register, and then when your age group opens up, they send you the note where you can now schedule. So we're all set now to get that second dose. But for the folks that received it earlier to that system to come in, it doesn't transfer the information over automatically. You have to go online and register. So this is where I think it's mainly the folks that were in this, that are 75 and older. So if you have ways of messaging out to any of those folks, they need to be registered or they won't get a call for a second shot. There was 2 different systems and the data is not transferring from one to the other. And then also what I heard in Island Health is that now there's a push to get everyone in for a vaccine. So families can take their children in together to the same appointment at the same time. And also we need to encourage folks in their 30s and 40s to get vaccinated. They're not getting vaccinated at the same rate as those that are 50 and 60 and older. And these are the metrics that are important for us to hit the reopening stage. Like we all need to get vaccinated. We need to build up herd immunity together. So those are just some pieces that came out of Island Health briefings. Does that make sense? So if you're not registered, make sure that you do and push that out. I didn't even think about that. So anyway,
if you phone
lots to
them up,
think about.
if you phone them up, they'll tell you when they're sending the letter out. Because I was caught like you thinking that I wasn't registered, and I was for some reason, but I'm not 75, so maybe that's the answer. But I got mine on the 6th of April, but I phoned before that. But they confirmed that Jane and myself are both in the system, and we'll get a letter in July, an email actually. But it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
Call them up and check if you have any doubts. It's important you get that second dose.
Yeah, and I think they said it was kind of up in like everyone sort of March and then April 1st. So it could have been the cohort that's just ahead of you, but it's best to check because otherwise they're not going to get called and they need that second dose.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, everyone. I believe that brings us to the end of tonight's agenda, unless I'm missing anything. I don't think so. So as always, take good care of yourselves and I'll call. And if you're attending AVIC, make sure you should have your voting credentials, your username and your password. And you need to get in now to vote on the resolutions as well as for the board. And it closes tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So there'll be 3 different ballots that open up for different things, but it's pretty straightforward. I did all of mine earlier today. Just so I could know what I was talking about. So I'll leave it at that. Okay, motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Okay, take care, everyone, and thank you very much for tonight. All those in favor of adjournment? And I'll take that as unanimous. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Good night, everyone. Thanks.